Moneyball, a story so good, they made a movie out of it that was nominated for Best Picture after it was first good enough to be a New York Times best-selling book. Moneyball has gone down as the definitive baseball movie of the 2010s, maybe even sports movie in general, representing an even bigger story. The Oakland A's stringing together a playoff team with a bottom 3 payroll in Major League Baseball by using advanced analytics in never-before-seen ways. It's a story nearly every baseball fan knows. And Billy Beane, the architect and decision-maker for that team, indirectly shaped how every team in the league would start to perceive players. But what Billy Beane never could have anticipated when implementing these new strategies was just how massive the aftershocks of that 2002 season and the revolutionary new thinking from it would be.
Billy Beane was a good man.
I'm not saying he's a bad guy, calm down. But what I am saying is that he may be the closest thing baseball has seen to an Oppenheimer figure in the last few generations. I think that's a perfect comp for this story, actually. J. Robert Oppenheimer, father of the nuclear bomb, is now very well known for his struggles with the unintended world-changing consequences of his creation.
Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
Especially thanks to a Christopher Nolan movie that also has Josh Peck and Roderick in it. In our world today, Moneyball is nearly always painted as an underdog story and contained to the 2002 Oakland A's. But what were some of the many negative results Billy Beane and the A's could have never even dreamt of when they decided to go down the Moneyball path, for lack of a better way of phrasing it? We'll start with the most basic of them all. The origin of the building a contender on a budget story was due to a very simple dichotomy in baseball.
There are rich teams and there are poor teams.
Teams like this have more money and more resources. Teams like this do not. So Moneyball was born out of trying to give the little guy a competitive edge to stand toe-to-toe with the big dogs to the best of their ability. Their competitive advantage was advanced analytics, never really seen or exploited before, but are all ever present in today's MLB. We'll get back to that later, by the way. But what happens when the secret's out and the big dog starts using the same strategies? Now, they have your way of thinking and more resources to pull it off. Consider the Los Angeles Dodgers, who have now won 2 World Series championships in the last 5 seasons. The man who built this Dodgers core is named Andrew Friedman. Friedman previously built the Tampa Bay Rays, the real example of a team competing based on analytics and fewer resources compared to the A's, and was offered the keys to the castle of a big market team starting after the 2014 season. Billy Beane himself called Friedman soon after he got the Dodgers job and said, "It's going to be fascinating to see how much you can take from what you did with the Rays and apply it in a large market. And it's scary." Well, we now have our answer. The Dodgers have never missed the playoffs in 10 seasons with Friedman, and are now the premier organization in all of baseball. This is something the end of the Moneyball movie briefly alluded to. The Boston Red Sox, a big market team, were interested in hiring Billy Beane to run their team and use analytics to break their 80-plus year championship drought, having also hired former Pork and Beans factory employee / godfather of baseball analytics Bill James as a consultant. They did keep their vision in play of using analytics to break the drought with their eventual hire when Beane turned them down.
86 years the Red Sox have won the World Series. It's true. It's happening.
And they've won 4 championships since then, the most of any team. Beane never left Oakland for another, more financially endowed team.
Billy Beane is extremely sexy and cool. So that's definitely one of the reasons why I signed with the A's.
He's the exception, not the norm there. Many future executives who helped build small market teams into contenders have since been scooped up by the big market teams to build them back up when they fall down. It's kind of the same as when good coaches at small schools in college almost inevitably wind up at a powerhouse. But here's the thing. There's a lot more of the younger, analytically minded executive types in baseball in a post-Moneyball world. It was a huge story when the San Francisco Giants hired their former superstar player Buster Posey to be their president of baseball operations, because he wasn't one of the Moneyball-type executives who tend to come from Ivy League schools with degrees way more prestigious than you or I probably have. And sometimes, You may even see an executive who sees the success of the Moneyball A's type teams, is jaded that even the big teams have analytics-based strategies now, but with more resources, and refuses to build the best team they can just to prove a point. The headline of a Sports Illustrated article in December of 2024 read, "Orioles GM Mike Elias unwilling to spend against owner's direction." What that means, per the original report from Pitcher List, is that the owner of the Baltimore Orioles wants to spend more money to improve his baseball team.
We've got a wonderful new ownership group that's trying to infuse the franchise with everything possible to bring it to the highest level.
Mike Elias, the man in charge of putting the team together, is refusing to really do that. Why? Because of a, quote, vanity project to prove you can build a winner that isn't like the Dodgers or New York Yankees. If this is true, we now have actual MLB executives refusing to max out their resources just for this chase to be more like Billy Beane, who, it should be noted, never won or appeared in a World Series as the architect of the A's. Assuming that report is true, you can quickly start to speculate about the nature of the players the Orioles have signed in an offseason where they had holes to address. And no offense to the guys they brought in, didn't add any super high impact pieces to support their strong young core. Sure, yeah, Elias has eventually spent some money, but it's on pieces generally considered not needle moving or underwhelming by fans or the industry. One could surmise he's only spending more money because his boss told him to, but not on very many names that make massive impacts on the team just so his true motives can still be in play.
We're making the best effort possible.
That's not true. That's not true.
So now, we live in a world where analytics have consumed baseball. Is that really the best thing for baseball as a consumer product, though? Look, I will concede this in a heartbeat. Teams make analytics-based decisions because they ultimately lead to smarter decisions. I also spent my entire grad school tenure as director of analytics for a Division I college baseball program. My job for several years was literally to be skinnier Jonah Hill from Moneyball for an actual baseball team. I am not inherently against analytics. Quite the opposite, actually. I am simply presenting the idea that maybe, just a little, it went a bit too far for the average fan's enjoyment of watching and following baseball. Heavy reliance on analytics has resulted in tangible ripple effects within the game that most would perceive as bad things. Blake Snell is pitching so well in Game 6 of the 2020 World Series for the Tampa Bay Rays, the small market analytics team even more so than the A's, remember, that it got Stephen A. Smith to acknowledge a baseball thing.
Blake Snell looked like the Cy Young Award winner from 2018. I mean, he was doing it. He was dealing.
However, the reason he acknowledged it at all, and the reason the Wendy's restaurant chain's social media guy would rip the Tampa Bay Rays soon after, was that the Rays pulled Snell from the game after just 5 1/3 innings for no other reason than that he was about to face the LA Dodgers lineup for a third straight time. That's it. Just because pitchers tend to do worse against opposing lineups the third time around. Snell was doing great. The Dodgers weren't touching him. The Rays removed him because analytics said to, ignoring how he was actually doing, and the pitchers who replaced him coughed up the game and the World Series.
And you take him out because of analytics?
Analytics are a tool. You do not blindly make decisions that follow them and them alone because they're simply information and advice. Not the end-all be-all that you give up any feel for because baseball, of all sports, is the least predictable and most statistically weird. Analytics are very pro walks and home runs. Walks and home runs are great for offenses. They correlate very well with scoring runs. But with a push for more walks and home runs has led to an increase in strikeouts as well. Swinging for the fences more often has its consequences and all. These 3 outcomes are called the 3 true outcomes of baseball, since they don't involve defense. It's just hitter versus pitcher. And if the fielders just stand around and pick their noses, nothing changes on the play. Since 2002, the season in which Moneyball took place, the rate of 3 true outcomes in baseball is up a little over 18% from where it was then. And every year since 2017, 1 in every 3 MLB at-bats ends in a true outcome. Part of that also correlates to the increase in strikeouts across MLB, which is just as much a product of pitchers chasing velocity and pure stuff maximization because analytics and dollar figures say that's better for them. When, again, this hurts the consumer product experience for baseball fans because chasing these things and nothing else also correlates with the most pitcher injuries in the history of the game and teams using each pitcher less and less, limiting fans in the amount of time they can actually watch their favorite pitchers. I already have an entire separate whole video on this channel about that. Fan favorite position players are also commonly squeezed out of baseball by analytics more than ever, if they don't have the upper echelon, most desirable traits in the game, ignoring whatever these players could mean behind the scenes to their team and beyond. Jose Iglesias' impact on the 2024 Mets all but saved their season. Fewer than 5% of his hits in 2024 were home runs, and fewer than a quarter went for extra bases at all. Most teams expected that style of play from him. He didn't even have a single MLB opportunity the year before. That's because, as his teammate JD Martinez put it, he doesn't, quote, play computer in the way analytics tend to say what being a good baseball player is. Sometimes, you gotta go against what the data suggests. Taking a risk might even pay itself off analytically too. Most teams wouldn't have taken the chance on him at all for that reason. I think the Mets are overjoyed that they did. Oh, and one more thing. Analytics have ruined baseball discourse on social media. To whom it may concern, you are not an MLB front office executive. I highly recommend watching Sad Man Baseball's video on Freddie Freeman for a better explanation on this than I could ever provide. I want to close this out with a subtopic of that Freddie Freeman video that may be the worst and most dangerous consequence of all from Moneyball. Moneyball is, at its core, the story of a team with fewer resources winning on a budget. That was true in all likelihood at the time. 23 years later, there is so much more money in baseball and the people who own baseball teams. At the time of Moneyball, MLB was considering removing 2 teams from the league for financial reasons. It's not the same world in 2025. Revenues have skyrocketed, so have the valuations of every single MLB franchise. But many owners have simply chosen to pocket that cash instead of reinvesting it into their teams, because they delude themselves and those who care about the success of their teams into using what Billy Beane and the Oakland A's front office did to say they can win games with less money too. Newsflash: you really can't. Big spending does correlate to winning, and these days it seemingly reflects the very basic concept of trying. MLB has even gradually leveled the playing field since 2002 to take measures that prevent big market teams from just running away with the game without the little guy, metaphorically speaking, even having a chance. But yet, there's still undeniable penny pinching in the game over trivial, shameless cost-cutting matters. 9 teams, 30% of MLB, cut their payrolls down from 2023 to 2024. This current offseason isn't 100% done, I know, but the overwhelming majority of the league is on pace to spend less money on players than they did in 2024. Only 4 out of 30 MLB owners even invested 60% of their 2023 revenues into their 2024 payroll. Even big market teams who have television deals and can spend record salaries on managers are still not adequately using their finances to improve the team on the field. And even a big market team who won a World Series by spending, soon took every measure possible to cut corners to not have to spend that much money again, and field weaker, on-a-budget rosters as quickly as they can start spinning that narrative. The very same Oakland A's Billy Beane is still a senior advisor for are spending more money this offseason. They're only doing it to avoid a grievance from the players' union with how shamelessly and egregiously they've cost-cut in years past.
You think this is bad? This chicanery? He's done worse.
In 2018, the MLB Players Union actually did file a grievance against 4 MLB teams for blatant payroll slashing and lack of spending on their team. And then, the Players Union 2 years later doubled down with a second grievance against 3 of those same teams. The point here is not asking every team to spend equal money. In a world without a salary cap in baseball, That's never going to happen. The payroll disparity is greater than ever before from the top and bottom of MLB. The point here is that as money grows in baseball and each team climbs higher in worth and earning potential, they're not using that extra money on players. So the owners can take home more money, pretend to legitimately not have money, and say something to the effect of, "We're building a team on a budget." It's not a true rich and poor situation in baseball. Odds are, your favorite MLB team's owner is a lot, and I mean a lot, richer than you. Many have the capability to spend even more to chase success, which ultimately does earn you more opportunities to make money through things like playoff games, jersey sales, added exposure on national TV. They just choose not to because they don't want to bother spending as much to field a team, using Billy Beane implementing a successful analytical strategy to compensate for actually having fewer resources as a cover story. Even if they don't say that directly, that is the indirect logic of it all, making a mockery of the landscape in baseball at that time, and pretending to be in a much worse situation than they actually are. In a sense, delegitimizing what Billy Beane actually went through. If you actually are that poor, sell your team, by the way. There will always be a buyer who gives you more money than 99.9999% of people will ever see. There don't even really need to be budgets in baseball. Plenty of great owners who genuinely want to win championships prove that time and time again. Even Andrew Friedman will tell you that. I do wonder what Billy Beane and the brilliant minds he worked with think of the financial situation of MLB today, both among big and small-scale spenders. I'm very confident, though, that when he ultimately signed off on the nearly unprecedented strategies of Moneyball in 2002, that he never could have known what was to come as a result. Least of which, Brad Pitt playing him in a movie.
I think it's weirder for him than me.